Where's Mom?
She was cooking or something, getting stuff in the oven.
Okay.
Think
Wonder where Wade is.
she was adding the potatoes to the roast.
Did Justin leave her?
No, he's staying, but Cars was eating avocados and thinks she's allergic to them, and her throat started hurting, so he's staying up there with her.
Okay.
It was Mom's idea.
I hope her video stuff. I left my phone out in the truck with Chuck. Can't bug me.
Well, the video's working, so,
And I could have seen that the video or the sound went down because after Mom said something, I could see the bar wasn't moving, like the sound bar.
yeah, and you know, it did it again this morning. So it's, for whatever reason on this new computer, every time I shut off the program, it shuts off the sound. So I have to go through the process of
But it
putting
was
the
working
sound
when
back
we
on.
started. It just cut out.
No, it was working on one side, but not on the other. It was, this camera, the camera that focuses on the pulpit wasn't working, but the camera that was here, because I had to, or last Sunday morning, when I got it going, and I noticed the sound wasn't working on either one. So I redid it, but I only did it for this camera. And I thought that would take care of it for the other camera, but it didn't. So, but now this morning, I did the same thing again. But now I got both of them. This time I got both of them working. Well, then we'll go ahead and go to, we're going to go to the, I'm going to let you read the Board of Education and Publications report on your own. There's not a lot there. But I do want to go to the Board of Missions report, and that's on page 43. So you have a devotion there. Again, you can read that on your own. If you go to page 44, this is where you actually get into the meat of their report. So it says, the CLC currently supports 4 domestic mission congregations through monthly subsidies of varying amounts. These subsidies of these congregations are reduced each year with the intention of them eventually becoming self-supporting. We pray that the Lord will continue to bless them as they work to spread the gospel in their communities. In the past year, Gift of God in Mapleton, North Dakota has reached that goal and has become self-supporting. We thank the Lord for enabling this to happen and pray for his blessing on the work of that congregation in the future. So they actually, that congregation started and got off a subsidy rather quickly by historical standards. How long have they existed? Maybe 15 years at the most. So
That's a good guess.
yeah. So you have the 4 that are still in existence. You have the one in Appleton, Wisconsin. That one's been there about 6-7 years maybe. Then Zion here. Mount Zion, Madison Heights, Michigan. And then Ascension, Tacoma, Washington. That one's been going for quite a while. So you see there their membership numbers, and the one in Tacoma has reduced significantly in the past 4 years. It shows here from 35 to 23. And ours is reduced 2 in that time. Of course, we had a couple gains and then, or a few gains, and then now we've got a few losses again. But so you have reports of each of those 4 congregations. Besides that, understand that the subsidies that come to us from the mission board, that come to these mission congregations, it comes from their budget. And that's important because the mission board deals with several different funds. They have their main fund, their budgeted fund, which is their general fund. But then they also have the MDF, which is Mission Development Fund, and that's for one-time projects. And then they have kinship, that supports widows, orphans, and seminary students in our overseas missions. But besides the subsidy to the mission congregations, there are other things that the mission board also includes in its budget. Well, for example, the foreign missionaries are covered out of their general budget, not out of the MDF. Though sometimes when they try to start up a new mission or a new missionary, they will use the MDF until they can work it into their general budget. So the general budget doesn't have to all of a sudden come up with $45,000 more. So they'll work it in over time. On the middle of page 45, you have this Committee on Domestic Fields. That's something that the convention started a few years ago, or directed the mission board to start. And it's made up of Jeff Amen, Pastor Nathaniel Mayhew, who is the Board of Missions representative, Pastor Tom Nauman, Nathan Nelner, Tim Shazer, and Pastor Mark Tiefel, and Pastor David Udy. And they work at supporting stateside mission work among CLC congregations. It's not specifically for mission congregations, it's for all the congregations. So, you know, they'll put out, some time ago they had a series of videos that they did. I think it was like 3 different ones, sharing what some congregations are doing to give other congregations an idea of what they might be able to do as far as outreach in their own communities. And this Committee on Domestic Fields also works at creating resources to build education, awareness, and enthusiasm for domestic mission work and evangelism efforts. They have been given funding to expand these efforts among our domestic congregations and are excited to implement a number of ideas in the future. Previous projects here, bulletin inserts, I haven't seen those. Starting a preaching station and starting a congregation. These can be found at the CDF page on CLC Mission's website, and you have the address there. So I think that's where the videos are. Of course, there's also the Traveling Vacation Bible School that the mission board helps to fund. And then last year at convention directed the Board of Missions to look into the viability of assisting our mission congregations in starting Christian day schools. And they did form a committee for that to begin looking into it, but they ended up, which is a sizable portion of their report, they ended up deciding it wasn't, first of all, constitutionally the right approach is to have the mission board get involved with schools, because their conclusion is that the Constitution leaves that responsibility in the hands of the Board of Education and Publication. There's some debate on that. I don't think that is true. I think that's their understanding of the Constitution, not specifically what the Constitution says. The Constitution requires the Board of Education and Publication to assist congregations with educational material, but not assist congregations in starting schools. Now, originally, as I recall the discussion, were you there last year, Mark? You weren't there last year. As I recall the discussion on the floor of convention, it was initially intended to be directed only toward the mission congregations, but the mission board kind of objected at that point and said, whoa, this is a lot of work you're throwing on us all of a sudden. And so it kind of got scaled back into looking into the viability of helping congregations start Christian day schools as an outreach tool. And the mission board, they did, like I said, they formed this committee and they put together an extensive packet of information as to what all would go into starting a Christian day school, and they made that available to the CLC via email, including budget and different things of that nature. But what they are requesting, if you go on, well, let's go to page 47. That's where you will see. So this is kind of getting to the heart of it. Schools and subsidized congregations. So along with these conclusions, the Board of Missions further reviewed the impact on existing mission congregations and mission programs at large with starting schools. There is no existing budget for the additional cost of starting schools. Their significant cost increases will impact existing mission work unless new funding is secured. Mission congregations are already being subsidized for pastoral care. There is concern over young congregations taking on additional debt with limited resources. Most subsidized congregations do not have a facility for hosting a school. Subsidized congregations have limited membership to support additional school needs. Experience would suggest that subsidized congregations are not the most viable option. Trustees have expressed concern about adding funds during the current budget shortfall. Adding funds, yeah. So, then you have there be it resolved here, toward the bottom, that the original wording of the Board of Missions guidelines for subsidized congregations be retained, which states, for this reason, mission congregations will not ordinarily be eligible to open a Christian day school. Extraordinary situations will be considered by the mission board on a case-by-case basis. So they're kind of falling back to their original position, which, by the way, is not something that convention ever established. This is something that the mission board itself established. This is one of their own internal guidelines. We're not going to allow our mission congregations to start a Christian day school. Now, this is going to be a point of discussion at convention, because there are many of us who believe that that very conclusion or that very guideline is part of what's hampering our stateside missions. I'm of that opinion. And here's why. We don't do that, we don't take that position for our foreign mission work. If you go to their budget, or to the MDF, let me find it. Where did it go? It's not in their report, it must be in the financial report. Let's see. Looking for MDF. There's the Regents report. Regents has financial information. Why doesn't the Board of Missions have financial information?
On page 75.
Page 75. Well, the one on 76 is the one I'm really looking at. Notice the very first thing right after administration is school buildings. Then you get to go down a bit more. Kenya Moyes Bridge School. You can see we're giving $8,000 a year for that.
No, that's scaled, that was in 2018.
Yeah, but it goes on across.
I see it, my eyes didn't follow.
Yeah, it goes on across, and then you can go to the Yanyan NLC Kids. That one is going 5,000, 6,000, 6,000. You can see seminary sponsorships. It's up to 24,500. And that's just in one place, you got them in several places. And I'm not saying, hey, we shouldn't do those things, I'm just saying, they've taken a different approach with our foreign missions than they have taken with our stateside missions. And then we wonder why we struggle to have mission congregations here in the CLC, when it is obviously an important part of the foreign mission work. It's part of what helps them continue to expand and reach out more and more in the places that they are, which I think is great. I just think that maybe that mentality ought to be taken into account here in our own nation. My personal opinion. Okay, I'm going to go back to 75 because there's something there too that I wanted to call your attention to. No, that's not the one. I'm looking for another. Oh, that was Project Kinship. Anyways, they still get involved. Now go to 77. And then look, there's even more schooling issues in there. Let me find it. Bible school construction, $20,000. Now that's a one-time thing, but it's still getting involved in helping to fund schooling for mission work.
It wasn't a one-time thing, was it?
No, it's a three-time thing.
Well, two, actual in 19 and 20.
Oh, yeah, it never got spent in 2018, so it did get spent in 19 and 20, you're right. So, there's more than that yet. The Bible Institute, construction and repair, 15,000, 20,000. That's in CLC. Now, if you look at this going just back to 2018, there is one line item in that entire MDF for the past 4 years. Well, that's 5 years listed. You got 5 years listed, and out of 5 years, you have one expenditure out of the MDF that went to anything stateside, and that's $4,800 to Appleton, Wisconsin Living Hope Church. And I did some math, and if you add up everything that was expended over the past 5 years and divide it by here's what's spent on stateside, here's what's spent on foreign side, you got 0.3% was spent stateside. And that means 97.7% was all spent foreign side. Now, again, I'm not begrudging that we have work overseas to do, but it seems to me that our mission board has lost balance. There's nothing stating that the Mission Development Fund is intended primarily for overseas mission work. Now, I can say, well, obviously that's where the majority of it's going to go because, man, we've got so much to do over there. But a little bit closer to a balance. I wouldn't even say a balance if they just took the 10% and said, okay, let's put 10% of that stateside and keep working at outreach over here. We used to have a missionary at large, but they've completely cut that out in the past 20 years. We don't do that anymore. Why not? Well, one of the reasons that is given, well, if you had somewhere for them to go, then we could. And that is kind of the approach we've taken. We've never, even in our foreign mission work, we've never just gone somewhere and tried to start a mission. We would go when someone invited us. But we have, like, think about just my circuit trip. I've got 3 different locations. Well, had 3 different locations that we could, put a missionary at large there and start with 3 people and see where you can get it in a year. If you had someone there to work it. And maybe it wouldn't turn into anything, but maybe it would. I mean, we have a lot of foreign things that don't end up turning into anything, but we at least try. And my thought is we should try that more here. And I know we're a heavily evangelized nation, meaning there's churches everywhere, but that doesn't mean every individual is being reached with the gospel. And I think there's a lot that we're kind of turning our backs on because we have so much opportunity overseas. But I think we do still have a lot of opportunity here. So that's my personal feelings and thoughts, which I'll bring up at convention. Now, going on from there, back on page, how did I get to 50? 46 to 56. What happened to all my pages in between? I must have mixed up my... Well, I'll just say this. Let's go to page 56. Now, the mission board says, okay, it's not that we completely dislike this idea. We don't believe it's our responsibility according to the Constitution. So on page 56, this is the only other memorial. There's 2 memorials to convention this year. One is sent by the congregation in Hecla concerning the discussions with the Wells and the ELS. We talked about that last week. This is the only other memorial, and the mission board is suggesting that it would be, if the church body wants to go through with this idea of helping to set up and temporarily fund Christian day schools, then we need a different board to do that. See, the Board of Education and Publication don't want the responsibility either, because the Constitution doesn't give them that authority, first of all. Secondly, the Board of Education and Publication has no funding mechanism at all. They don't have a fund like the MDF. They just get a small little budget to produce very little material, maintain the web pages and very little material. But they don't have a way. So that could be an alternative rather than starting another board. Just say, okay, we need a funding mechanism for the current Board of Education and Publication to begin this work. But that's not the approach they took, because the mission board, in consultation with the Board of Education and Publication, both boards decided that is not a responsibility they want to take on. And so the Board of Missions is suggesting that we start this new board called the Board of Education. And then giving it a starting budget of $10,000. Okay, any questions or comments? There is a lot there about our foreign mission work. I don't want to just skip over that. That's all the pages that I'm missing. Where did they all go? I moved them.
Which page are you looking for?
Pages 47 through 55. Oh, you took them.
No?
I know. I just got them mixed up here in my pack somewhere. But, so you got this long report on what convention directed the mission board to do last year, that the mission board said we don't want to. Well, said we don't think we should, put it that way. And then you've got an extensive portion of their report deals with the foreign mission work, the individuals involved, Missionary Evenson, Missionary Ullman, Pastor Michael Garath from Phoenix. He goes once a year to, well, he's part-time missionary to Kenya and Uganda. Pastor John Hine is a part-time missionary to Liberia. Ted Quaid, been called to serve as Christian school instructor supervisor. So there's another example of of the mission board getting involved in school.
What page are you on?
I'm on page 49 now. And they do want to call a third foreign missionary. And all of that is great. Like, in times past, I've gotten in conversations with different individuals, some on the mission board, some outside the mission board, and when I say, you know, I would like the mission board to be more domestically minded too, I end up getting often a response along this line: what do you have against foreign missions? I don't. I love it. I'm not saying we shouldn't be doing foreign mission work. I'm just saying make sure that we take a more balanced approach. But anyways, you have all this work that the Lord has opened up to us, and it is amazing when you think about the small size of our church body. All these opportunities the Lord has given us here, and I mean, there is a stat somewhere in the convention report that tells you about how many souls we're talking about. So here in the United States, we have a little under 7,000 total members. And we aren't, by any stretch of the imagination, completely funding all the overseas missions. We're just helping, we're assisting. But then you remember that this small church body, the amount that we're helping to reach the gospel with in our foreign mission work is, you know, upwards of 100,000 people. And so it really is considerable. And the Lord is the one that keeps opening these doors. Just a few weeks back, missionary Oman took a trip to the Philippines because someone there contacted. Now, I don't know what came of it. I'm sure we'll hear a report on that at convention. But that's, you know, all the places that we are. I mean, we're in South America, we're in Asia, we're in Africa. The only place that I don't know that we're not in Australia and we're not in Europe. Although we used to be in Europe. We used to have contacts in Germany and in France. But
What's the situation in India now politically?
Politically, it's difficult. I haven't heard any reports. I just know right now we are not able to get any of our missionaries into India. But I haven't heard of any outbreaks of open persecution lately, any reports of that. But I know that the government right now, the ruling party in India right now is cracking down on, it's not lawful in India to convert to a religion, if you're Hindu, to convert to another religion. But you can be converted from any other religion back to Hinduism. So they are cracking down on that a little bit more. So you, on page 54, you have their budget, the general numbers here. The general budget is $423,480. Now, from that, the breakdown is, okay, that goes to help support our mission congregation stateside, but it also pays for administrative costs and it pays for our foreign missionaries. And then you have the MDF budget, 100% of which is going to our foreign mission work, at least for the past few years. And then you have kinship, which is also 100% to our foreign mission work. I think once you take into account the subsidy that of everything that the mission board does or spends, if you take into account their general fund, the MDF and the kinship, I think you would find that we're roughly at about 7% of the entire amount that they spend. I didn't do the math on it, but I just did a quick glance at it. So you're right near, well, $900,000. So 900,000, 7% of that is roughly $60,000 that is being spent on stateside out of 900,000. The mission board appendix is just, they're offering some language change in the Constitution in case their memorial passes. The memorial is, okay, let's start a new board, so now whenever you do something like that, you also have to provide word changing or wording change to go into the Constitution. Questions or comments about Board of Missions? Not a detailed review, just highlighting some things there.
Where would the third foreign missionary be? Like, where are they wanting that third missionary to be?
I don't think that they've nailed that down yet. I know a couple of years ago what they were thinking about doing was, okay, we'll call a third missionary, we'll have him take up residency somewhere out of the United States, maybe in a central location to the places that they would want him to go. But, I mean, there's no doubt we could use another man on the ground in Africa permanently, like Peter Evenson is. East Asia, there's opportunity there. Then you got India we can't get into right now. So I suppose it would probably be somewhere East Asia. They're not looking at doing another like what Missionary Oman is. He's 6 months here in the United States handling correspondence, communications with all of our foreign mission work, and then 6 months out of the year. It's not a precise breakdown, but basically it's half and half. He does conduct some classes over the internet, I know that, while he's here, but then 6 months out of the year he's traveling around to all these places, checking on new contacts, visiting present groups that are affiliated with us, instructing, teaching in the seminaries or Bible colleges, preaching at all kinds of congregations overseas, through interpreters mostly. Conducting conferences with pastors overseas, so he stays on the go. Okay, next, page 59. Here you have the Board of Regents report. The Board of Regents oversees ILC, which is a considerable amount of work as well. If you go to page 60, you see the enrollment from this last school year and the projected enrollment for next year. So last year we had 100 students. This year we're projected to have 92 in the high school department. Last year we had 19 total enrolled in the college. This year we're projected to have 23. Seminary, we had 3 enrolled last year. This year we're projected to have 2.
What page are you on again?
Page 60. I got a whole another.
No, it's okay, I got
Okay.
it. I got it.
There are some personnel changes that have taken place. Of course, Prof. David Schaller is now the new professor there in place of Professor Rhyme. Marcy Gergel is the new art teacher. Courtney Agenton is the girls' dorm supervisor. Paul Agenton, her husband, is the boys' dorm supervisor. Steve Sito, well, he's been involved there for a long time, but most of these are more minor changes. You can read through that. Now I found my other pages. Look at there, here they are. How did they get here? Okay, well, you have recent graduates there. This last school year, they began offering dual credit courses for our high school students. You know, a lot of high schools have this already, where if you take this class, they will be accepted as college credits. Now, of course, for us, because the college, our college, isn't accredited, which means it's not universally accepted that whatever classes, whatever credits you get at our college will necessarily transfer to another college. They are accepted, however, at University of Wisconsin-Eau Claire and at CBTC, Chippewa Valley Technical College there. So the only courses that do not transfer are religion courses. But everything else transfers, which means if you're in high school there, if you take certain high school classes that are dual credit, you can take them and have them as credit for your high school, but also for your college. And that becomes at least a financial assistant to some students who intend on going on to either Eau Claire, University of Wisconsin-Eau Claire, or CBTC. They adopted a new policy on appealing discipline decisions, enrollment, grades, etc. You can read about that. Team goals, teaching excellence and accountability with mutual goals. There's a new policy to maintain and promote professional improvement for the faculty and staff. Buildings and grounds, you got the Emmanuel Professorage Committee continuing to try and maintain those homes that we own for our professors. A lot of them are in rough shape. And the maintenance of those buildings, of those homes, so easily gets put to the back burner. It should, like any congregation in the CLC has to take into account, okay, we're gonna have some level of maintenance this year for our church or for our past, the parsonage or whatever. And it's not that ILC doesn't have some maintenance in the budget, they just don't have that much. It's such a tight budget, they don't have that much for maintenance. And that's been the case for years and years, which means things can go a long time without being taken care of in the professorages. I know right now, I was talking to Prof. Rail about one of the decks attached to one of the professorages is it's like a death trap. It's not even usable because you don't know when you might fall through. So I know that's one thing they're planning on replacing this summer. I was going to help him, but in talking to my older boys, they don't have the time to help me do that, and I can't do it on my own. So anyhow, now ILC does have this what's called the ILC Improvement Fund. It's kind of like the MDF, the Mission Development Fund for the Mission Board. They do have this ILC Improvement Fund, which allows them, first of all, to have a way to fund some projects that people can contribute to individually, like through your offerings. You could say, okay, I want so much to go to this fund. You can do it for MDF, you can do it for kinship, you can do it for the ILC Improvement Fund. and you see there what they have budgeted for the next year and what they have spent. Hail damage that occurred, I don't know if that was last year or if it was I think it was the year before. And pretty much, well, all of the AC had to be reshingled, but I think all of Ingram did too. And I think a couple of the professораges had to be.
I think
What
it
about
happened
the-
over the summer and then at the beginning of the school years when they did the repair.
This year, this last
Mhm.
year, okay. I know the replacement took place during the school year this last year, I just wasn't sure when the storm actually
Yeah,
took
but-
place.
what, July?
I'll agree with you.
Now, there's some pretty exciting things on finances, and I wish I could keep it all straight in my head, but when I sat in at coordinating council and listened to, the Board of Regents present their report, I was astounded by what they are telling us. Even though the cost of education and, I mean, the entire cost of attending ILC has gone up, they have not passed on that cost to the students or to the students' families because of, they have these special funds that have been set up over the past 10 years that have allowed them to roll the increase in cost over to living off of these endowments. For example, they did this interesting study on what is the actual amount of money we spend per student for what they're getting. That's a wrong way of saying it. See, I'm not a numbers guy, I'm not a financial guy, but I understood this report. So if you break down, okay, like here's the freshman high school class, and here's how much time the professors have to spend with this number of students. How does that break down? And how does it break down with the junior class and the senior class? But now understand the college classes are even smaller. So how the professor still has to spend the same amount of time, but for less people. So you break it down, and the cost, of course, when you take the entire expense, the cost for running ILC, but which includes the human resources, the manpower, and you break it down by how much time is spent with these particular students, like, in seminary, there's one-on-one sometimes even. But you got 8 guys coming in doing one-on-one with one guy over the course of the day, or the week, or whatever. And they figured that, I think it was like 40, like, if the sim student was actually to pay his share of the time, it would be like $42,000 a year. But the sim students are only paying $2,000 a year to attend. But they've also looked at it in like conjunction with, okay, what does another university charge for this level of education? And even there, it's an astounding number. The level of education that we're providing compared to what other places are providing, and the difference in cost is just remarkable. Anyhow, I wish I understood the numbers better to be able to present it to you well, but I don't understand it. I just understand what they were communicating, how astounding it is. But there is, of course, well, I'm not getting to that yet. You see on page 66, basically the breakdown of the cost of running ILC and where that money comes from. So student revenue is $871,450. CLC subsidy and other is $315,000. Now, it used to be an unwritten policy that our church body held, that we were going to try and remain 50-50. In other words, the students bear 50% of the cost of attending ILC, and then the church body bears the other 50% of maintaining ILC. I remember about 10 years ago, it being discussed at convention, and some people were like, well, we're gonna have to be satisfied with a 60-40 approach. The students are gonna be responsible for 60%, the church body for 40. Well, now you see, we've dropped even beyond the 70-30%. But at the same time, even though that there's been that drastic change in percentage, the cost for the students, look at, for a year, $6,779 by today's standards. If you take into account, from when I was there, it was, I think, my last year in sim, I think it was like $3,800. If you take into account inflation over that time, this is cheaper than what I paid. So that's an amazing thing. What's that?
Yeah, those numbers work out for a student from Marquezan, a student from Minneapolis.
Oh, right,
It don't work out for a student from Phoenix, Arizona.
right. And we've learned that too. It's far
It
different.
don't work out for Zion in Atlanta or Winter Haven, Florida.
Right. It's a
Columbia, South
significant
Carolina.
difference. Yeah.
I think that student aid fund needs to have a whole lot more money in it and help people that come. I mean, I don't know how many more students it would bring to ILC if the cost of getting your kids there from San Francisco, and how often can the parents come and how often can your kids go home during the year, what kind of cost there is in that.
Yeah. Well, two things on that. First of all, there was a push about 10 years ago to try and dramatically increase the amount of funds available in the student aid fund. We wanted to get up over $1 million, and then it soon became apparent that we needed to get up over 1.5 million to really make it a self-sustaining and actually, back when I was in school, you could get the whole year funded through the student aid fund. That's no longer possible. Now you can only request up to 75%. And I think then they only grant you like 80% of what you request. So what's 80% of 75%? You're getting close to roughly 50%, maybe 55%. So you can get a loan for 55%, which is about where ours has been, right? I mean, our monthly payments is roughly half of what it would be if we had to make full payments. So there was that push, it just never got there. And partly because, well, there's been other things, a new academic center, for example, and more foreign mission work. It's like Phil Radical used to always say, I don't care how many pairs of pants or how many pockets you sew into your pair of pants, money's coming from the exact same place. Just because you have more pockets doesn't mean you have more money. And that's kind of what has happened with our church body, in regards to ILC. The other thing, they did conduct a survey a few years back, asking parents, what are the reasons, what are the top reasons that you don't send your kids to ILC? And cost was like number 4 on the list.
I'm sure it's not the number one reason.
Right. Number 1 reason is,
Mama don't want babies 2,000 miles away from home.
right, that's it. And, and you can say, well, that's kind of a weakness on the part of parents, except we don't live in the same society we used to live in. So it's not, it's understandable that someone would say, ooh, that's taking a lot of risks. But, the one thing that is obviously not the reason is the shape of the buildings. You know, that was one of the things that we were told when we approved what was the academic center? That whole project, I think it was like 3.7 million, something like that. That the reason people weren't sending their kids was because the shape of I mean, we had little Ryan Hall and little, even smaller cottage. So we built a $3.7 million structure, and we actually have fewer students with a really nice school building. So it's not that either, but predominantly is, you know, even if it was free, I think it was one of the things that I remember reading at the time. Even if it was free, I still wouldn't be sending my kid. Anyhow, so you have the breakdown here, and you have where the money comes from, students, and then from the CLC. Basically, whenever you give missions, whenever you send in missions, that goes to partially help support ILC. Okay, I'm going to stop there because it's getting close to church time. I wonder what happened to Wade this morning.